Welcome to DXgov governance discussion for Wednesday, February 1st, 2023. We will start first with the proposal roundup. Let me actually just share my screen here to go over the agenda quickly. Okay. So a bunch of mainnet proposals, and then also a couple on Gnosis chain, and then a bunch of these are Redemptor ones that we can kind of go through, and then we had maybe two points discussion items here. First one is from the DXD Monetary Policy Committee, is adjusting the liquidity discount multiplier for SWPR and ENS tokens, and then there are actually two big ENS on-chain proposals right now. One is just funding the working groups for Q1 and Q2 that actually executes that. And then the other is to sell ETH into USDC. So just wanted to check a little bit on the approach there to see if there were any kind of questions or thoughts there. That's a ledger, Murph. So we're on this page. Cool. So we'll start first with, as I said, the proposal roundup on Mainnet. So we have these two different schemes right now. We'll get to a proposal to deregister the schemes in a little bit, but we have on the old funding and voting power scheme, we have two boosted proposals right now. Milan V there, and then also a proposal from Leviate. Sky, I think this answers your question on whether they can sit with yourself for hours. I think he mostly wants mom, so that's the thing. So there is one proposal. I just want to quickly say this because I did actually vote against it. There is the Leviate mainnet sync. You can kind of see what my thought process is there. If you look at this, it actually takes the percentage of rep on Gnosis base and then it applies it to mainnet. But the way that we've done all of these rep syncs in the past and the way I think it should be done is you actually take the amount of rep that you hold on Gnosis base or that you've earned there, and that the absolute amount is what you transfer over. That's the reason for that. I sent him a message and told him that if he did a 24,000 or the actual amount he had it on Gnosis chain, that would be would vote for that. And then there, just to go through the funding and voting power scheme here, there are four different ones that are currently boosted right here. Two from DXgov Guild 2023 Q1 funding. I don't know if Ross is on here. Maybe he could talk a little bit about that and give everyone a break from the child, these two proposals here.
Yeah, sure. So these are both just contingency costs from our H1 funding budget that passed. So that is a new smart contract developer, Federico Nani. This kind of breaks down where the costs from that are coming from. And they're just getting transferred to the same multi-sig and then over to the DXgov Guild. So this is to pay for him for January, February, and March, I believe. And yeah, he's done a great job on smart contracts for Governance 2.0.
Great smiling picture there, Federico. And another Federico here.
And another one, yeah.
Always great to see more smart contract developers and getting them involved. And then the other one?
And then the other one's just the stipend. So that breaks down all team members. It was slightly different from what I'd written in the spreadsheet because I miscalculated it in the spreadsheet. So I'll update that just as it reflects in the spreadsheet as well. I don't think I've done that yet. But this is just half of the 4,000 a year budget that was set out by Contributor X. So that's 2,000 a year for full-time contributors, which is most of us, and then certain percentages based off of for everyone else.
Yeah, and I think Melanie, go ahead, because I was going to say I think this is the first one from.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. This is the first, contributor stipend contingency cost request, and great job by the Gov Guild and Ross for putting this proposal together. And this should probably be an example for the other guilds for when they do request their contributor event stipends. Perfectly done. Just writing contributor name, laying out like the amount, and then the total at the bottom. So this is a good example to use, as I know some contributors are beginning to redeem their contributor stipends and starting to go to a few conferences over the next few months. So this is a good one to point to as a good example.
And so basically the guild needs to request it from DXDAO, and then the guild, and then a contributor can get their stipend from their guild, right?
Exactly.
Cool. So maybe we'll have to see some of that for the operations guild. We'll need to do that, as I think some of us are going to Denver, and then same thing probably for the voice guild there. But
hey, Ross, I think I asked about this, but it'd be interesting to revisit. Can the DXgov guild yet make this proposal? Is that how this one's done, or did you make this proposal? Is that possible?
No, I just made this one. There's nothing technically challenging about that. It's just not like we're going to do DAO to DAO stuff eventually. It's just the UI has to exist that uploads to IPFS and does stuff like that.
Gotcha.
So it's
Yeah,
not
that'd
there
be cool
yet. But
when-
yeah, eventually once
When guilds
Yeah,
can actually
once,
make the proposals.
yeah, once we have 1.5 as well in Davi, it will make a lot more sense and be a lot easier for us to do that, because the UI will be inside of we'll have Davi inside of Davi essentially to be able to do that. Yeah, nothing technically challenging there. Another thing we can maybe do in the future that we just haven't experimented with is actually just bridging with the guilds. Again, nothing technically challenging, just a UX thing of actually withdrawing from the other side is a bit of a pain, as I'm sure Swapper knows, but we have a couple of solutions to that we might explore. So
maybe can check this offline, but we talked to the guys from Mimic, and they basically have a system for doing trustless bridging. And the key thing that you need, of course, in that is like a bot network that is doing that. So there may be a way to plug into what they built there. So I don't know if Dave, do they have that? I think the contract is deployed, or they had something they shared with us. So maybe we could just make sure. And then just because, Ross, this is being sent, I think, not to the guild itself, but is actually to the multi-sig. To the dev.
yeah, this is just following the same as you did for the regular funding. Yeah.
But you can kind of see, like, I think how this will work with, we have the approved costs. These are the ones that are sent to the guild. And then we have the contingency costs that end up like basically getting approved later. And so I think this is a good, maybe the Federico one is a good example of that, because I don't think that it wasn't that anyone would get that, but looking at the GitHub and kind of the way it's fitting in with building on governance 2.0, we can see that, oh, this is a contingency cost that like makes sense in what was pre-approved there. Cool. And then maybe just, and we're switching over to the new contribution reward scheme, which you can see here. There's several different redemption balancers here. So we have the 67.6 DXD. So I think this is for 14,000 DAI and for 20 ETH there. And you can see this was confirmed on the DAO Talk. The same thing for Zag's DXD redemption balancer number 3. You can see the Etherscan link there and confirm all of those. And Molotov's redemption balancer number 2 is the same thing. I think I voted for all of these because I confirmed them. Just to get a note that's interesting is I noticed Molotov and Zag are doing more than one redemption balancer, and that's because they're buying DXD when it is trading below the 70% NAV on the open market, and then submitting it through a member redemption balancer, which is a trustless way of really DXDAO enforcing the price floor guarantee, but incentivizing those to do it, because I'm not sure the exact profit, but if you're buying DXD at $650 and then putting it in here at $700, that's a nice little profit. Obviously, it only makes sense if you can have some capital to be able to do that arbitrage. Okay. And then there's SEPs and DUDs, who I've not had a chance to verify yet. The SEPs one is not a large one, but the DUD one is actually a pretty large one. I think it's 458 DXD. The though it's to the avatar that he sent it to, because we do not have a multi-sig here, but you can see that there. And then, yeah, so all are welcome to confirm that there. The proposal actually just boosted a little while ago. And then, yeah, there is another CalSwap liquidity order on there. Maybe Dave, you can talk about, there was another one. I was thinking that too. That's a good, maybe you can talk about this one, but then also like we just had one passed and how that went. And
yeah, I mean, of course I had to pass on a Saturday and some things didn't work right away. So my DMs imploded on Saturday. Yeah, so we placed our first liquidity order on CalSwap. The main, I would say, like the main thing why people were DMing me is that they placed limit orders at the exact same amount or just below what DXgov was like setting the liquidity order at, which didn't allow the solvers to actually take sufficient enough of a fee to match them. So like a lot of orders initially were not being matched. Then there was also, then like I just tried to sell one DXD through like the swap interface. And now the issue with the liquidity orders is that the swap interface actually doesn't pick up the liquidity orders. So you kind of have to trust that it will match it to the, you'll just get a much larger surplus. The UI won't actually show you the amount. And that also actually didn't match into the liquidity order. And apparently that was because the amount was too little. And then eventually people started figuring out that you just had to set a limit order, which was like somewhat below the price of the liquidity order, and they did start matching. And then, yeah, what Chris is pulling up right now as well is like the first two. There were two. While all of this was happening, we started noticing that the proposal did start filling partially, but we didn't really understand who was filling it. And like, I think if you start looking into the proposal, it appears as if the solver itself actually saw the price difference between the DXgov liquidity order place and the price of Swapper, of DXD on Swapper, and actually bought DXD on Swapper and then sold it into the own liquidity order it was kind of like solving for, which is a bit weird, but it's also kind of difficult to track here. But the order definitely went through Swapper from what we saw, and I think it was like 15 DXD, or, yeah, 15 DXD the first one, which was kind of like ARB that way by a solver.
yeah, and so like whenever you're looking at these on Etherscan, it's always like, okay, where did the DXD come from, right? So if you have a 400 WETH order, right, that DXD, presumably someone has that not in a liquidity pool, but they will send that DXD, and it's like, who is sending that? How are they doing that? And so Dave is saying, like, basically no one could sell into the order, except for if you look at these first two orders, the source of the DXD that eventually goes to DXgov, right? Both of these right here. This is the swapper liquidity pool, the DXD WETH one here. So yeah, it looks like basically it almost didn't look like anyone was selling into it. Was just the solver was recognizing that there was an order to buy DXD at 0.46 and that they could access a bunch of that on chain at much lower, I think like 0.4 ETH. And so it just like gobbled that up. But it was not actually, DXgov did not get the price at 0.4 that, you know, to bring it up to 0.46. It actually just got everything executed at 0.46.
Yeah. And the main issue here is that currently liquidity orders don't pick up surplus, right?
Right.
If liquidity orders were able to pick up surplus, this probably likely would have also happened and DXgov would have gotten the surplus. But unfortunately, it's not something CalSwap supports right now. And yeah, also like having to place orders 16 days out kind of like complicates all of this stuff a bit. They told me they're working on it and they will release some stuff in Q1 with like partially fillable limit orders and stuff, which would avoid this. But yeah, that's right now, unfortunately, there's no surplus for DXgov.
And then, so these first two were basically the on-chain liquidity pools. You can see these happened like right after the proposal passed. I think it was like 11:05 or executed. And then I guess no one could figure out how to sell into it. And then you see about like 50 minutes later, you see the first like people accessing and selling this directly. So you have this, 100 DXD, and then someone did, I think, 42 DXD here. And so that's people actually coming to the interface, CowSwap interface, and being able to do that there. But yeah, and then just as you said before, so this is another forward WETH order. This is at, I think, 0.55. The WETH price changes based upon the price of ETH, because DXgov has, a third of stablecoins. So a lot of that changes from that. But in order for this proposal to go through, there will need to be another proposal that wraps the WETH, and that can go through in 8 days. So that should be fine. We just need to do that, in the next day and a half there. And we'd already used the Mimic Vault a bunch of times. It's actually very, very helpful. And as a side note, we're trying to get them to build an XDAI wrapper for DXgov on Gnosis chain so that we can trustlessly wrap XDAI. Cool. I think that was, just two other ones I missed before. The return of DXD sent by DXgov mistake. Big shout out to Wayne for coordinating this. And yeah, so this guy, I think it's sent, it's like almost a year and a half ago to the DXD contract address. And so it's just requesting that, and that DXD is recoverable there. And then the other one is a claim for Nathan on his February 2023 DXD vested. Have not had a chance to look at it. And but it said we can verify that there. And then the last proposal that is boosted and has 12 days to go is to remove the old contribution reward scheme. So this was submitted a little while ago by Adam, and then Candy Fork boosted it yesterday or a couple days ago. So this would basically get rid of this scheme here. And this scheme, of course, is the one that allows proposals to be submitted with multiple redemption periods, whereas a new funding and voting power scheme is the exact same, except for it doesn't allow that. And so need to do the same thing on Gnosis chain. I haven't looked at, I assume that I can do that. It's not that complicated there. But yeah, 12 more days for that to go through. So we'll be looking at it for a little while. Okay. And I think that's it for mainnet. Let me just check here. Actually, let's see if there's anything else that I missed. Okay, and then moving over to XDAI, sorry, Gnosis chain. We're moving over to Gnosis chain, Murph. Cool. So again, we have the same thing here. We have these two different proposals. So in general, if you're doing, please submit through the new one. We're in the process of figuring out how to get that one out on both chains. So we have Levotiate's end of work proposal 2. I voted for this one. It's the payment for the end of the work there. Also contributor stipend from Levotiate. Contributor X has looked at this and confirmed that. And then we have, I think, a fun proposal, one that I would encourage everyone to vote for. That's a proposal to establish the Governance Stewards Program. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this one. We had talked about this a lot, I think, 2 weeks ago, but didn't get a chance to submit it on chain at the time. But this proposal has been to incentivize good governance and to be a way of encouraging existing rep holders, anyone larger than that holds 0.1% of rep, to get paid for participating in governance there. So the proposal thresholds for this one are attend 9 governance calls. So that's like starting basically after the proposal would pass. And so I think that's about 45 or 50% of the governance calls. And then to vote in at least one proposal per month, 5 total starting in February. It is possible that participants could join starting in March or some other time, but the goal is basically you can start whenever, but you need to be able to finish the program to be able to have to be able to get paid for all of that and forfeit the payment. Anyone that is interested in participating, the first thing I would do is vote on this proposal. It's a really great way of getting your participation rate up, and then you'll have to post in the DAO Talk thread with the following information so that the Operations Guild can manage this. And this does not this proposal. This is the Gnosis chain one, but there will be later this afternoon. I'll submit a mainnet proposal that would fund this amount. So I think it'd be like 8,250 DAI that would be sent to the Operations Guild multi-sig there, and then it would be disseminated to the probably to the, I guess we bring it to the guild, and then people can claim their payments directly from the guild there. But that funding proposal will come through in the next this afternoon. So I don't know if there's any questions or thoughts on this. Cool. Two other boosted. Ashley, you need to do this. Ashley, DXgov legal challenge and global decentralized strategy. So this is DX legal assessments. So Ashley had done this, and we had kind of processed it all. And I think she'd submitted one a couple months ago, but it was incorrect. And so I just am finally seeing that this is the one that she has now reposted there. And I think it's for the right amount, which is 2,500 DAI there. But you can look through the proposal and double check everything there. And then there is number 8 Milton contributor proposal. I love that Milton puts the numbers at the beginning. I really like it. I feel like I'm following along with them there. But yeah, just boosted today. And Milton also does a good job, I think, with his proposals and writing a reflection and kind of talking about where he's at. And then the last one on Gnosis chain is International Blue proposal, December creative director. Yeah, this is, I think, the end of December. So this would be the last proposal that would go through the DAO itself. And then going forward, that is claimed through the guild itself. So there is still some proposals going on Gnosis chain. So yeah, make sure you're checking that base there. And I think that's it for Gnosis chain. Any thoughts, questions on the Gnosis chain or mainnet proposals? Cool. So let's move on to discussion items, just 2 here. Yeah, out of the last Thursday, we had the first DXD Monetary Policy Committee meeting. A lot of good discussion there about the redemptions that have been going on, and then also some little bit of a long-term plan for how to incorporate inverse bonds, and how to get DXDAO in a healthy position when it comes to DXD liquidity, and a good feedback loop for DXD holders and DXDAO to produce. One of the things we did discuss in terms of adjusting some of the levers, and that's kind of one of the points of this of having this meeting every month, is figuring out the little different things to adjust. And one of the levers that I think would make sense to adjust is the liquidity discount multiplier of the SWPR and ENS tokens. So the liquidity discount multiplier, maybe that's I don't know, probably a phrase that could be shortened in some way, but basically it means all the core assets in DXDAO's treasury contribution to NAV is 100%, right? So ETH, WETH, USDC, all of these contribute that, because those tokens, people will literally take those out of the treasury themselves. They'll accept those, any of those, and the other ones like the staked ETH, that could, of course, be easily converted into ETH or dollars that they're very, very liquid. But we've applied the liquidity discount multiplier to, I think, 3 assets right now: the GNO, ENS, and SWPR, just because those are all, I guess, interesting or have unique circumstances. So SWPR, of course, DXDAO owns like 78% of that, and it's not very, very liquid. ENS is actually pretty liquid, but that was gifted kind of to DXDAO to govern, and not necessarily just as a treasury asset. And the same thing for GNO, that there is some strategic alignment there. I think specifically when you think about maybe supporting Gnosis chain there. So this proposal here would do two things. It would actually lower the swapper discount, liquidity discount multiplier to 10%. So therefore its contributions would be it would be lower than that. I can change it here, right? So you can see how that would affect NAV. And then the other thing it would do is it would raise the ENS amount to 50%. And I think that is in line with the reality of these assets. And I think Swapper itself, I think, as I said here, if you can, a $250 purchase of Swapper token incurs 5% slippage. This is on Gnosis chain. So I don't think it's very liquid, and so I don't think it's necessarily a good idea to have that as such a large contribution to the Treasury NAV, particularly because I think it can be easily manipulated. And there's been some activity on the Swapper token price the last couple weeks, and I'm not sure if that is related to people trying to inflate the Treasury NAV, but this is a good way, I think, of getting ahead of that. So I think this will probably just take the form of a signal proposal through Gnosis chain that kind of lays out this here, and this would be the first one from the DXD Monetary Policy Committee meeting, and maybe we'll have some proposal like this every month to adjust some of the levers there. You can see Hedgehog got to 20 characters and endorsed this, but I wasn't sure if anyone else had any thoughts, comments, disagreements on this. You think it should be 0, to be honest, and up. That's fine. I think that affects the NAV a lot. And the direction this is going, and I think I actually missed it, but this morning, actually wonder what they did. The U.S. Fed had their, so they're just meeting. They haven't released it, but just in a little bit, the U.S. Fed will release their policy recommendations basically for this month, and that will presumably be a interest rate increase, but not as big as the one that they've had in the past. And I think if you look at how the Fed has, the reason this was named the Monetary Policy Committee is because I do think you're trying to mimic a lot of the goals of a monetary policy for an economy, but for DXDAO itself. And for that, it is about like the direction where things are going. Much more it is about getting like the precise amount here. So it's not that the Fed hiked rates 4% in last June. It was they hiked 75 basis points every month or two for 6 months, and that kind of signals to the market like the direction it's going. And then even now, if they only hike by 25 basis points, that's almost like it's still a hike, but because it's a decrease in the acceleration, it almost is like a market positive move there. So again, I'm not opposed to going to those, and maybe we can get there going further, but I think there is a benefit to moving things slowly. But it would be a good comment on the forum. You only have to have 20 characters to comment on the forum. Cool. And then the other two discussion items I wanted to briefly touch on is one, there's 2 on-chain proposals right now for ENS. So ENS is basically, they have a compound Bravo fork, but the like front end for it is actually just through Tally itself. So they have these 2. One is the working group funding. So this would fund the 3 main working groups. You can see the amounts there. I posted this in the governance chat a few weeks back, and there was some good discussion there. There's also passed a snapshot vote last week here, but this is actually, you can see this is like the funding proposal itself, and so you could see it actually includes, I think I'll have on here. Yeah, this is kind of, I think it's one of the things I've enjoyed about ENS is like seeing how other DAOs operate and what they're kind of using here. So you can see this is what Tally is showing here, and so these are like the 7 transfers here. So there's some ETH each one of those, and then they do have the actual executable code. So it says function 1, but that doesn't really tell you exactly what it is. But then they do have, I'm assuming this is the tenderly. Oh no, it actually doesn't have. Yeah, let's see what it does. No, that didn't really work. But maybe they're looking to have the tenderly simulation right in here. So anyway, this is the first one there, which I think is not as controversial. It does look like there's some people that had voted against it, Brantley and Gary Palmer. So I wasn't sure if there's any thoughts on that. Candy Fork, of course, has the 46,000 DXDAO ENS tokens as a delegate. And so right now was planning to vote for that, but wanted to see if there were any thoughts on this. So I'm just looking at Brantley's reasoning.
How big are these working groups generally? If that's 2 quarters of, it's not just 3 people, right?
No, so actually the way that the way that this works, I think there's 3 stewards for each of these working groups that are paid, but all of that payment is actually included, I believe, in the meta governance working group. And if you look at most of this funding, a lot of it is grants for small grants for ETH limo is 80K in one of these. I can't remember what. Yeah, here you go. Gitcoin grants. So small grants, that's an ETH. Gitcoin grants, rapid grants, large grants. So like most of this one is the public goods working group is like just funding these different things, not actually funding individuals. The meta governance one is the one that does include the steward and secretary compensation. So that's this line here. So it's 184K for the 6 months for 9 people. So I think that comes out to like a couple $1,000s a month there. Yeah, and then I think this one is the ecosystem working group is actually the biggest one you could see here, 935K and 250 for ETH there. And so again, you can see like a huge amount on hackathons, huge amount on the support and grants. And then whereas ETH limo, for instance, is getting 85K and 10 ETH here for continuing to run that. The ENS ferry has gotten some attention lately there, but a lot of it is. Yeah, the only one that actually includes the individuals is in this meta governance working group. So actually, this is actually now I think 10 individuals because it's 3 stewards per working group, and then the secretary itself, Daylon, who actually does a really great job.
Yeah, that's interesting. So a lot of it is just allocation for the next 2 quarters to basically get grant and pay for advancements in. Like there's one that's builders, that's just funding one-off builders, like building on stuff for ENS. Do you know if Karpathy, who is now in charge of, is not in charge, but is looking after the treasury, is involved in what percentage of their total treasury is this they're allocating towards these 2 quarters, and is that a target that they're factoring in for their treasury management? Do you know?
Yes.
I'm trying to. This is very similar to DXDAO, right?
Right.
So it's
right.
like lessons learned. Yeah.
This is so in addition to these, and so let me go back to. Is this the? So right. So this one is what's passing now. So it is total. I think like $4 million. A little bit less than that. I think 3 point something like that. Or actually, no, it's 2 point because over the year, if you annualize this over the year, it's like $4 million, right? This is what the DAO is spending. On top of that, ENS is funding ENS. No, what do they call it? ENS Labs, I think, used to be True Names Limited for $4 million, I think also. So there's like an $8 million total spend. And then the total treasury, I think, is around 40 million right now. But the other thing about ENS is like making a lot of money. So it makes about $1 million a month in renewal fees. So
the treasury is not including ENS token, right?
Right, does not include that yet.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And all the renewal fees go into the treasury.
Yeah. So this is. I mean, we were skipping a little bit here to the next one. Where are we on? So right now, it all goes to the ENS treasury, and that's why ENS basically only has like a bunch of ETH. And so that's why this proposal, this is the 10,000 ETH that it's basically has earned from fees throughout this. And so you can see here, this is a proposal led by FireEye's DAOs to basically sell 25% of that into USDC. Yeah, so I guess it's like they have about a little more than that, $55 million total treasury. And this is meant to ensure that they can cover operations for the next 18 to 24 months. This is separate than that's getting confusing, separate than the endowment initiative that Karpathy is doing. So what Karpathy would be doing is actually managing basically the rest of this 75%. And then actually another thing, but it would even manage it would manage this too. It just would be in USDC as it's going. And just to kind of give some background, I think this is a little bit of maybe a power struggle. The fact that there is this, where is it? The endowment initiation that has been going through right now, that is basically, I think Karpathy posted about a week or two ago, was basically how they plan to do everything through the Zodiac module, through the different, you can kind of see the size of things right now. Yeah, so this is their current one, 67 million, 2.5 million in USDC. And then this is the amount that just basically comes into the treasury through referral fees itself. And so they have a plan basically for executing on this endowment initiation. You can kind of see it there. And I would say that the sell $10,000 ETH into USDC is, I don't know, called a rival plan, but it is not being led by Karpathy. I'm trying to read you, Dave, but the Jitsi chat is yeah. I kind of agree. Yeah, I kind of agree with what Dave's saying here, is that some of this, I think, is a little power dynamics in terms of like kind of controlling the treasury. Just to, as I said, for the one before
Dave, do you know if so they want to do this 10K ETH sale as a is that a liquidity order on CowSwap?
They want to use. Well, right now, I think the last I read, the James guy, the Fire guy, was proposing to do one sell with Milkman on. Well, he initially, I don't know, it changed a lot, but he wanted to submit, from what I understood, was like one big sale using Milkman CowSwap, which just places an order at the time of the proposal passing. And I mean, Chen also commented that there's not too much slippage.
Milkman would be like a DCA style. Like
no. So with Milkman, they want to place like one order. Milkman is actually really cool. Like we could have used it for our buybacks, because the way we did buybacks is we created a CowSwap order at the time, like 16 days before the proposal passes. What Milkman does is it actually creates the order when the proposal passes, so you don't have to do that prediction in advance. But some people like Avza was suggesting to do a DCA instead, which I think would be more reasonable as well. But I mean, I would think it would be more reasonable for. I mean, I've just been following this like a bit, but like from what I understand, the endowment proposal already a few months ago took into account selling ETH for USDC. So as Karpathy won, there was the expectation that Karpathy was going to undergo this step, right? And then suddenly, out of nowhere, Fire DAO Eyes also created this proposal. So it's a bit confusing, to be honest, because Karpathy was expected to do this based on the signal snapshot that passed a while ago. But on the execution method, it looks like it will be Milkman. And I think the only outstanding question is whether it will be DCA'd or just done in one transaction. And a lot of people in the Karpathy proposal are actually asking them to sell ETH when ETH is high, which I found very amusing.
Asking them to sell ETH when ETH is high, like to wait?
To just time the market, yeah, that's what they're asking them to do.
That's what you get paid for, I guess.
Yeah. As I said before, the Q1, Q2 funding proposal, planning to vote for that. And I'm actually right now leaning to voting against this one for most of the reasons that Dave laid out there. Because I think it's kind of confusing in general. And then I also think the big reason is like, I think, doing something dollar cost averaging over a longer period of time, I think is definitely the move. And if the way that I'm reading this right now is that it does not dollar cost average over that time, it basically just, it's almost like just like the TWAP, use the time weighted average price. So you're just not, because if you mean 10,000 ETH is a lot of ETH, right? So if you sell that right now on the Uniswap one, that's going to lead to not just some slippage, but you're going to get you're going to get a lot of MEV out of that. So I think the Milkman one, I think just splits up that order, but not over like a long period of time, I don't think. And I don't see that in this proposal here. And this is like an on-chain proposal. So you should be able to see that it is, that it would be over that time period. But yeah, I don't know if people have thoughts, because if you look right now, there seems to be a lot of people voting for it. Very few people kind of voting against it.
Will either any of these tools that they use, will ENS DAO itself do the actual proposal the way DXDAO to put this order?
I mean, that's what this is right here. Executable code.
That's the actual.
Yeah. That's why I'm curious to say the simulation.
And so this vote, like if this vote passes, this on-chain thing actually just goes. Yep. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, ENS is, I think DXDAO is maybe at the extreme, but I think ENS does a very good job as well. And so,
this was one of the open questions that we kind of had when people were competing for ENS's endowment. There's obviously, the vote was all signal proposals, right? And then there's a proposal that there's going to Karpathy's in charge, right? But at the end of the day, because things need to happen on chain and the money's sitting in the ENS treasury, this is an example of everything is going to need further additional on-chain proposals, and people can vote different than they did in the signal proposals, and that's going to happen continuously over and over and over, unless you actually give the delegation power to the person that you actually signaled to be in charge, right?
Yeah, well, I think this is why I think the FireEyes DAO went with this proposal quickly, because there is currently one, this is like 2 weeks ago, that is the execution of that proposal that they got awarded, right? So this one would actually be the transfer of funds, and then Karpathy would be in charge with executing it. It does use like a Zodiac modifier role, so it's not that Karpathy actually custodies the funds. They are only allowed to do certain things, and I believe those certain things, you can see those right here. But yeah, I think that's why the proposal to sell 10,000 ETH in the USDC is there, just because it's because this one from Karpathy had not gone through. So yeah. Yeah, the proposal is up for another 5 or 6 more days. As I said, I think I'll vote for the Q1 one, but I think leaning towards voting against this one primarily because of the dollar cost average component. I don't really see any benefit into not splitting this up over a couple months. And I think it's a much more responsible way of doing diversification. I do want to confirm that it is not that through the,
Yeah, I mean, the unique thing is if the next quarter they get another same amount of ETH in, and they get that every quarter, and that's ongoing. Maybe ENS activity goes lower and higher and stuff, but you could get in a rolling basis of that it's kind of is, because if they do the same thing next quarter with new ETH and ETH's a lot higher, like it is already kind of an averaging system. Like if you just do some every quarter and you get a new ETH every quarter, right?
Yeah, and I think there's lots of ways that ENS could fund itself. ENS makes money on chain right now. It's just like $1 million a month. So I think it would be, because basically the impetus for this proposal is that we want to secure runway. Worst case scenario, what happens? How do we make sure ENS can function? And I think there are a lot of other options with that you could incorporate into this that could be considered. I'll share, before I vote or anything on this, I'll share kind of thoughts in the forum and make sure others have anything else before moving forward. Cool. Anything else on this, or anything else? Yeah, I guess the two just calls to attention. The ESP, what is it? I can't remember. Electronic signaling for something. But this is the Priorities Board. The app that's running the Priorities Board is really, really cool, I think, in terms of how it got set up. And big shout out to Louis for that. And so any rep holder can go and allocate to whatever priorities they think are necessary, both for DXgov and then also the guild itself. And then, we had, if you're interested, we had also had the first DXD Monetary Policy Committee last Thursday. If you want to check out the info there and the slides there, will be cool. And then be on the lookout for some more follow-up information in the coming weeks about the long-term model. And as I said, we may be adjusting the swapper and ENS liquidity discount here, 20 care.
On the ESP tool, so far there hasn't been any DXD holding wallet that has expressed interest to participate. If anyone here has DXD in another wallet, they can do that. Any DXD holder, if you're listening, you can just submit your wallet on the forum in the forum post, and you'll get your voting points, and then you can participate. There's one wallet we know, at least a rep holder, who changed wallets recently, which once we get sorted out their proper rep, their wallet will get voting power corresponding to the rep, but we haven't had any other mishaps so far.
Yeah, I think Rusty is a snapshot because there's maybe some coming from.
So there's no snapshot. So if you're bridging to the same wallet, either way, you can submit that wallet on that form, and that wallet will get voting points based on the amount of DXD. So that can be, we can check that wallet on all the chains too. You can also add multiple wallets if you have DXD in multiple wallets too.
Cool. Sweet. Anything else on the mind before we split here, and I can make sure Murph still is all in one piece?
Nothing, thanks.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you, cheers.
All right. Bye.
Thanks.